Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Today is a day of first of all, welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast, day number 1138. And today we've entitled it We Shall Remember. It is 9/11. So what do you remember about today? What happened in 2001? Where were you? What memories do you have? Do you have them written down for future generations so that your perspective of the day will continue on, that people will remember? Yes, there's all the news reports out there. There's the history.com website has a whole page on it. But what are your personal memories? Those are the ones that make them come more alive for future generations. I love sitting down and reading biographies about people, especially the autobiographies, reading those, reading diaries that people have left behind. I forgot to get it out. But what are your memories of 9/11, 2001? My memories are that I was working for Marriott at the time. I was at the residence in Merrifield in Fairfax, Virginia, and our hotel was right next door to the American Red Cross head office. And I was working the night shift that week. My night auditor was off. I was a front desk supervisor, so I was filling in for our night auditor that week while he was on vacation. And I got home at 7 o'clock around 8 o'clock in the morning. I said good morning, goodbye to Brad as he went off. And actually, I think he might have still been in bed that morning. That part's a little fuzzy. But anyway, I ended up seeing Brad before he left for work. He left for work. He must have left well after I got home, because he was telling me later on. He told me that on his drive to work, he saw the smoke go up from the Pentagon as the plane hit. Now, he worked in Southeast DC, and he would take the Beltway around, because we live in Northern Virginia at the time. He would take the Beltway around the bottom, around the southern end, which is against the flow of traffic. So at that time of the morning, he basically had a clear run through to work. But as he was driving, he saw the smoke go up when the plane hit the Pentagon. Me, I was at home in bed asleep. Although night auditor, I didn't sleep very well whenever I was working night audit. I'm definitely a morning person, not a night person. But I woke up around 11 o'clock in the morning. I'd only had like 3 hours of sleep, which was normal for me. And then I'd get up, do some stuff, and then I'd go back to bed for an afternoon nap before getting up and getting ready to head into work for a 7 p.m. start. And so I remember waking up at around 11 o'clock, and I thought, we've got paperwork we have to get back by tomorrow. And so I went and called Brad, because I thought, well, let me find out what time he's coming home, and then we can sign the paperwork. I can leave earlier for work and swing by FedEx to drop the package off, because they had a drop box at the local FedEx depot, and then I can just carry on into work. So I had it all planned perfectly. So I get on the phone, I call Brad, he answers, and I turn around, so what time are you coming home tonight? We've got to get this paperwork signed and get it back in. So this is what I was thinking of doing. And he goes, haven't you heard what happened? I go, what do you mean? I said, I've just got up. And he's sort of like, well, he said, the Twin Towers are no more. And I'm like, as in the World Trade Center in New York? He goes, yeah. I go, what do you mean they're no more? Because I'm like thinking, there's this big 2 tall buildings. What do you mean they're no more? He said, there was 2 planes that flew into them. I'm like thinking, are you pulling my leg? Are you having me on or something? He says, turn the TV on. And so I went and found the remote and turned the TV on, and there it was, all there on the news everywhere. And then he was telling me about how the Pentagon got hit, how he saw the smoke going up from that, about the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. And he says, we're basically shut down here. We're not allowed. They're broadcasting CNN through all the computer terminals here in the office. They've basically closed us down. We're on lockdown at the where he was working, and they're not letting us go home yet, but I'm not sure what time we're going to be coming home. And I'm like flicking through the channels. I'm like thinking I'm watching a movie. I seriously thought, I said, this is just a movie. He says, no, it's on every channel. And I'm like flicking through the channels. It was on every single channel I went through. And I was sort of like, what the hell? And so he said he would call me when they were getting released, when they were going to unlock to let everybody head home. And I'm like thinking, okay, catch up with what's going on. So caught up with what's going on TV. Then I got on the phone. It took me an hour to get through to the hotel that I worked at. It took me a full hour. And when I finally got through, they basically, Marriott had done a complete shutdown on all the hotels in the Washington, D.C. metro area. So everything in Washington, D.C., everything that was within a certain circumference of the center of Washington, D.C. was shut down. And it was a blackout, which meant that not even those with the premium Marriott Reward card, the very top one, where you can normally, if those ones have there's I can't remember the level of the card. It's the top level of the Marriott Rewards program, and it means that if you turn up to the hotel and they're sold out, they have to give you a room, or it's going to cost the hotel a lot of money, and even if you're sold out. But this was on lockdown. Not even those members could book a room or walk in the door and go, hey, here's my card. We were on complete shutdown. We could actually turn those members away. And so I finally got through and said, look, I've just woken up. I've heard what happened. Do you guys need me to come in early? And they're like, yes, please. So I worked out what time they wanted me to come in, because the place was nuts. They had a lot of people check out that morning and had gone to the airport to fly home. And of course, the airport got shut down at Washington Dulles. And so they were all wanting to get their rooms back. And we have, because we're next door to the American Red Cross, they had people coming in, and we're right there. Like there was even like 3 or 4 steps that would go from our parking area. You go up these 3 or 4 steps and you're at the American Red Cross. That's how close they were to us. And they were almost like, we can't take you back in. We're closed down. We are shut down. And the only people the rooms that we had, well, we just left the rooms. Yeah, they've been taken by American Red Cross. So American Red Cross were bringing their people in from local areas and things to the hotel so that they could do whatever it was that they needed to do with everything going on and do their crisis management or whatever it was that they were doing. So our hotel was basically sold out by American Red Cross. And so I ended up getting in there. I think it was like, I was meant to start at 11. I was meant to start at 11 o'clock at night, and I was in there at 7. And I had stopped by like I did every night, stopped by at the supermarket, got something to eat for dinner that evening, or early breakfast, whatever you wanted to call it. And so got my evening snacks, got my food for the evening, and picked up a book and thought, this sounds really cool. And the book I picked up was Vince Flynn's, I can't think of the name of it. It was basically, was it Vince Flynn? I think it was Vince Flynn. But it was a story about terrorists that had overtaken the White House, and this ex-CIA agent operative they sent in to find out what was going on in there and to do what he could to rescue the president and all of that sort of stuff. So don't ask me why. I read weird stories at weird times. But it sounded interesting, so I decided to read that, despite what had happened that day. And so I got into work there. It was mayhem. And then it was just me and the security guy for the night, and things started quiet, but it didn't quieten down in the lobby. I was never alone that entire night, which was unusual, because normally I'm sitting there, I get all the work done, midnight comes, we run all of the end of day processing stuff, do all the checks and balances and everything, and I got to do all of that, but I was constantly interrupted. There were people coming down to talk. They needed somebody to talk with. We had the Gatehouse. If you've ever been to a Residence Inn, they have that dining area, which they call the Gatehouse, which is where you do breakfast. They do manager dinners during the week, and they have they had a TV in there, and it was sort of like, and they had a couch in there and all that. That place was pretty full most of the night. There were people coming down. People wanted to be around people that evening. They did not want to be sitting in their hotel room by themselves watching it on the news. So they came down. The TV was playing constantly. They had it on CNN, so it was constantly going and going and going. And they never touched the remote control on that thing. But people were coming down and sitting together rather than sitting up in their hotel room, in their rooms watching it by themselves. So it was a pretty, and they were there all night. I was never alone in that whole lobby gatehouse area that entire evening. Um, I was still trying to comprehend what had happened. A lot of them were trying to comprehend what had happened, but they needed to be around people, which I totally understood. And I was appreciative of the fact that people were there, because if I was in that thing by myself, who knows what my mental state would have been. But that's what I remember about 9/11. And so we had some hotel guests that were still there, that were booked in for the entire week. And of course, now they were like, well, I just want to go home. And was like, airports are closed. The only thing available is car rentals, if you can find a car rental place that has cars. And but it was interesting just listening to people's stories of what had happened that day. And we still had people coming into the hotel, um, finally getting back from where they had been in DC, because they had taken the train in and they couldn't get the train out. The trains were shut down. They had no way of getting back to the hotel. And finally they were able to like hitch rides with people. Were taking other people, where are you heading to? Yep, right, hop in the car, come with me. And they said that the streets were gridlocked in DC. And they said, but they finally got everybody out of DC, and they said it was like a ghost town in DC. But people were offering strangers rides to get them out of the city, um, and get them to wherever it was they needed to go. So I thought that's really cool that people were helping people that way, because we had a lot of guests who had gone into DC that day on the train and couldn't get home. So we had people coming in at all hours of the night that had been dropped off by strangers. Um, and it was just a very different vibe in that hospital. I'd never had a night shift like that before. Um, I mean, you get some fun stuff on night shifts, and prom night's always interesting. We all know we had marked on the calendar where prom night was, and all of that sort of thing. We had marked on the calendar when certain events were happening in the area that we had to be aware of. But that night was I saw a lot of people coming together, a lot of strangers coming together and just supporting each other and just being there, and them all just watching the news at the same time, talking about what they were doing that day when they had heard about the news and that sort of thing. And um, they were contacting family back home, making sure everybody was okay. If they had people who were in the areas where the planes had gone down, they were trying to contact family back in those areas to make sure everybody was okay. Um, and then they were also trying to figure out, how do I get home? Like telling their bosses, telling the companies that they were there to visit or do whatever it was they were there to do, that we're not coming in, we're heading back home. And then trying to figure out how to get back home. So we had a lot of stuff going on that night, and it was the most strangest night I'd ever had on night shift when I worked, because I did a few night shifts, to help out with the night auditors and stuff. But it was just a very strange night that night. I was happy to get home the next day and get some sleep. I was mentally and physically exhausted by the time I got home the next morning. And what was really weird is I got on the freeway, and it was 15 miles door to door. I was home in less than 15 minutes. There was nobody on the freeways, and I was heading against the flow of traffic. But it was really weird. There was no traffic on the other side of the road either, because normally at that hour of the morning when I was heading home, I'd finish at 7 o'clock, clock out around 7:30, after doing all the changeovers and everything else. And then I'd get in the car, and then I'd get on the freeway and go home. And there was nothing on either side of the freeway. Nothing. It took me less than 15 minutes to get home. And Brad wasn't going in that day, so he was still in bed asleep from the night before. So I just crawled in next to him and curled up and went to sleep. And so we ended up spending the day together. And of course, I had to go back on night shift that night. But it was a very strange evening. So what are some of your memories about 9/11? Where were you when you heard the news? Do you have anybody that was on any of those flights? Write this stuff down so future generations know, especially if it's family members that perished on the flights in one of the buildings that were hit, simply because those are stories to be passed to the next generation, onto generations and things. so that they know that, oh, this person was on this. It's my mom sent me an article. She sent me this article one time about this guy, John Harper, who was a minister, and he was actually on the Titanic with his daughter, and we're not sure exactly who the other person was he was on the Titanic with, but it was either a relative who was there to be the nanny for the daughter because he had lost his wife, and so he'd been called to come and be a minister of some church in America, and so he took the nanny with him. But there is rumor that the nanny was actually like a cousin or a sister. It was some sort of relative that he was taking with him to help care for his daughter. And they were on the Titanic, and the nanny and the daughter survived, but he did not. So it was interesting reading that article. And my mum says, is he any relation to the Harpers in our family? And so that's one question that I am still researching to this day, because there's not a lot of information out there about this particular John Harper. I can find information on his wife's side of the family. I can find information from him. I can't even find his birth record. So it's interesting to find out. And, if it does turn out that he is related, then that's a family story that we can let the rest of the family know and have it there to pass on to future generations as well. So when it comes to big historical events like that, did you have anybody involved in that, in whatever the event was? But take the time to remember where you were, what you were doing, and write it down. Just write it down. Just your thoughts, your memories of that day, so that it's there. Everybody has a different perspective on an event. You can all see the same event. You may be seeing it from different. You could be at an event. Like if you're at a concert, for example, everybody is in a different place, and you leave that concert, that conference, that event with a completely different perspective from somebody else. And depending on what angle you were and what you were watching and what you saw, it could be different from, if you're sitting over on this side looking at the stage, somebody sitting on this side of the hall, the stadium, whatever, and looking at this side of the stage, you're going to see different things. But if you come together and talk, you'll get a fuller picture. And somebody who's sitting straight onto the stage, what they got to see and things. And yet you all heard the same words, but you all interpreted it differently. So write down your perspective of that date, of what happened, what you experienced that day, what your thoughts were that day, what your memories were of that day, so that when future generations come along, they can go back and they can read these, accounts of what you remember of that day, what happened that day. So then also too, it is a way for us to remember what happened that day. It is a day for us to remember those who lost their lives that day. It is a day for us to remember those who were injured that day, either temporarily or permanently, based on what injuries that they had. It is just a way for us to remember that day and to be grateful for life. We all have a timetable. We don't know when we all have an expiration date. We don't know when it's going to be. And that day there was a lot of expiration dates that expired. Sorry to put it that way. Somebody's going to come back to me and go, everybody has an expiration date. We're all going to die at some point. And, when it's our time, when our time is up, There's nothing we can do to stop it. So if this is a way to remember those who passed that day and gone on to a better place. So anyway, that's it from me for today. Take time to remember today what it stands for, and what your thoughts and memories are about it, so that future generations have those memories as well, so they too can remember. That's it from us for today. We have a special guest coming on tomorrow. I am super excited about this. But go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Remember, no matter what happens today is always super fantastic and sparkling. Hey, Konara. Oh, and tune in we're going to be on at 6:30 tomorrow night. 6:30 tomorrow night, and we have a very special guest coming on. It's going to be awesome. I am fired up. But anyway, go have a super fantastic sparkling evening. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Hei konara.